I'm here to speak on behalf of BeTheChangeYYC. We're a volunteer-driven street outreach organization here in Calgary. I've spoken a few times before. Next slide. So in the past year, 2022 to 2023, we served over 17,000 individual contacts. It's important to note that, again, 47% were Indigenous, and so it's important to prioritize, of course, housing specifically for this overrepresented population. 1/3 were sleeping outside. Next slide. So we handed out enough sandwiches to build the Calgary Tower almost 8 times that year, and over 83,000 pieces of food and drink items. Food is the most requested item for folks on the streets. Next slide. Our team leads who run shifts right now are nurses, paramedics, EMR. They run trained volunteer outreach worker teams of 4, often coupled with folks with lived experience to help along the journey. Next slide. Over our 8 years of operating, the most consistently requested referral year after year is for those who want and need housing. For many years, this has been the standard, and folks will wait many months and if not years. This has been happening for many years. Next slide. So this is from 2015, our Calgary corporate housing strategy. Sorry, I made a spelling mistake, obviously. I want to highlight the bottom there, that 94% of Calgarians included that affordable housing for low-income families was the second most important thing to them in Calgary. The first thing was transit. The second, 94% said, was affordable housing. This is in 2015. Next slide. So the National Housing Strategy Act, I find it interesting. This is actually a federal law that became law in 2019. It actually does mention housing. It is actually a human right here in Canada. So I just want to read it. Whereas housing is essential to the inherent dignity and well-being of the person and to building sustainable and inclusive communities, as well as a strong national economy in which the people of Canada can prosper and thrive, whereas access to affordable housing contributes to achieving beneficial social, economic, health, and environmental outcomes, whereas improved housing outcomes are best achieved through cooperation between governments and civil society, as well as meaningful involvement of local communities. Next slide, please. So we've known for years that we've been lacking affordable housing. We must implement immediate actions to address the affordability crisis that has increased the cost of living here in Calgary. The many hundreds of dollars per month that many folks have had increased to their rent, including myself, is unsustainable. Without collaboration of all the civil sector, public, all levels of government, this housing crisis will only get worse. That's some of our paramedics treating someone there on the streets, as you can see. Next slide, please. So in 2020, the School of Public Policy studied the cost of homelessness. $87,000 per person per year is what we, the public, pay for one person to be maintained in homelessness. I'm sure we're very familiar with the facts of that. Housing, of course, was $30,000. Next slide. So it's very clear we're already all paying for this housing crisis one way or another. Next slide, please. There we go. Next slide. We have an opportunity to create a city that leads the country in access to safe, equitable, timely access to housing. Our hopes at Be The Change and our prayers are that we seize this moment to create the change that people are literally crying out for. We encourage council to use all the tools provided and approve them to build more affordable housing in Calgary. I just want to add 3 points that I really liked in this plan, and I read the previous plan, which had some nice language in it. This plan has more details, like 3,000 affordable housing units per year. That's a key, very important detail. Talking about the rezoning, this is something that I think must happen because we have been growing and sprawling the city out, which increases property taxes as fire, EMS, and all of that are spread thinner. To build a denser city makes more sense. The other piece is the advocacy component at the very end to other levels of the government. It is very important that we slow down the pace of folks entering homelessness and ask the province for a rent cap. So thank you all for having me. I see my time's up. There might